Hey, welcome back to the show. Now, today's guest holds a very special place in my life and in my heart. I've had the privilege of knowing Megan and Andrew Estes for about 15 plus years, and their journey is nothing short of inspiring. Megan is an incredible mom to 4 energetic kids and a kind-hearted and patient leader, and really someone who balances her type A drive with grace and humility. Andrew, her husband, my dear friend, and Megan have faithfully served in ministry for as long as I've known them, starting churches, leading worship, discipling, doing life with people, and now helping churches find their identities and thrive in Jesus' name. But their story isn't one of constant ease or clear success. They've walked through seasons where ministry was just plain hard and sometimes felt fruitless, and life was tough. Through it all, they've learned the value and perspective of faith and perseverance. So today, we're talking about how to lead, love, and thrive, even when the results don't always come easily or quickly. If you're a business professional, a parent, or someone in leadership wondering how to keep going when the road is hard, this episode's for you. Let's go. Building empires at the cost of our families, identities, or even our souls? Welcome to Mission Driven, where we believe your purpose is bigger than your productivity. Hey, Megan, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming on here and hanging out with me.
You are welcome, and thank you for just asking and the privilege and honor to be here.
You're one of my favorite people. I think you know that. Your husband is also one of my favorite people. And I've always kind of, in some ways, I know this sounds crazy, like coveted the life that you guys have and the way that you've been able to just pour into people through ministry and into your children with, homeschooling and things like that. So I'm very much excited about this conversation for 2 reasons. Obviously, we're going to be talking about doing hard things, which I think we both have embraced. That's just part of life, but also something that I think we are built to do, right? Especially with God's help.
Sure.
And so I'm excited about that. But I'm also excited to put you in the hot seat a little bit and have a little fun with you, right? And so before we dive into this, the serious, deeper stuff, I was hoping you could share maybe a story of some sort, right? Where you've maybe in the chaos of being a mother and raising, 4 energetic, very energetic, by the way, and independent children, right? That would maybe resonate with our audience, which is obviously full of a ton of parents, but also they would laugh and nod in solidarity to the situation, because maybe they don't have 4 kids, but they have kids a lot of times. And you've told me so many crazy stories over the year. I'd love for you to share one of those with the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. Which, by the way, it's funny you say that you look up to us, because I'm always like, man, we need to be like Troy and Hilda. We need to have more people in our home. So we look up to you guys as spiritual leaders as well. But honestly, the story that comes to mind was just this last week. I don't know if I was in a meeting or where I was, but I came in through the garage and the house was just like with chaos. I was like, I don't know what's happening. And
literally the decibels are like, it's like a stadium, yeah. Right?
It's like, I'm overstimulated already. I'm not mad. I'm just like, okay, what am I walking into? And it was like my kids had drank a gallon of sugar or something. They were just off the walls, laughing, giggling, slap happy. The oldest 2 were trying to throw each other outside. And then the youngest one, who's like a little terrorist, he was like, yeah. I'm like, where's my husband and the baby? And then I go around the corner and I find my husband hiding in the boys' bedroom with the baby. And I was like, what are you doing in here? He's like, oh, I'm totally hiding. I have no idea what's going on. Like, it's just like our baby's happy. He's just like, yeah, I'm totally chilling in here. They're psycho. I'm scared. So, Parenthood, it's the scariest hood you've ever gone through. That's for sure.
I've never heard that one, but that's good. I'm gonna steal that shamelessly and
I like that
make
one.
sure that I'm talking about the hood, I'm talking about the right one, the scariest one ever.
The scariest one. It's fun. I don't know. Sometimes you don't know what you're walking into, but you just got to go with the flow, which I know we're going to talk about today with hard things. We got to go with the flow.
Your boys are psychos, so I've met them. I'm close to them. We're actually kindred spirits, so every time we get together, we have such a great time. And so, anyways, very excited about this conversation. Let's dive in. Megan, you are a self-pronounced perfectionist, right? I think I read that multiple times on your blog, right?
Recovering perfectionist.
Recovering. That's right.
Perfectionist.
Yeah. Are we ever really recovering? And you're definitely a type A personality, just very outgoing, very much like I know the way to do it. But what I've always appreciated about you is that you have a very soft spirit when it comes to things. And I think ministry and parenting will do that to you. And things don't always go as planned, right? That's just the way life is. So how have you learned to balance your drive for excellence, which, I've seen displayed in all sorts of things. I know you were very competitive, athlete back in the day and things like that, with grace when things really feel either unproductive or kind of fruitless?
That's a really good question. My first honest answer would be to cry, eat peanut butter, and then clean the house like a white tornado. That's how I would deal with stress level, or just like, I want to feel productive. I want to feel like I'm doing something because my life's out of control, or I'm hurting, or I'm scared, or this work situation or ministry situation is hard. So I'm looking for control in areas, right? Controlling the cleanliness or whatever. But I've really learned that I have to stop multitasking and be all in wherever God has me. So when I'm teaching this kid to read, I'm thinking about, I need to do this, and I got to start dinner, and I need to return these emails or whatever. And apparently multitasking isn't even a real thing. Our brains don't actually do it.
I was about to say, it's not really.
Task switching or whatever, which is
right.
Exhausting for your brain, because we want to feel productive. And so God's constantly reminding me that the things I feel productive in might just be my own flesh and pride wanting to feel productive, but he's using me when I don't feel it and when I'm at my lowest, and I'm trying to tell that brain to shut up and turn off that list and be all in with whoever I'm ministering to or whatever the assignment is for that day. And then as far as fruitless, man, motherhood is definitely somewhere you can feel fruitless at times. We're constantly training over and over and over again the same thing. Like my 5-year-old, why do we have to have this discussion every day? Push it down, stop peeing on the seat. I'm tired of sitting in your pee. Like
it sounds like my wife talking to me.
Come on, But it's funny I say that, and I would get upset about these things, constant training or feeling fruitless. And then God's like, hey, Megan, haven't you and I had the same conversation about your stuff and your life? And I'm like, yes, Lord, I'm sorry. So as I'm training, God's training me all the time and refining and, just learning to switch the mind of what we're actually thinking about and what's God's will, not mine.
But I think you can look back on how long have you been married now? 17?
Yes.
17 years. It's a good guess, right?
17.
Yeah. I think I've known you for 15, 16 years, something like that. Just you guys just got married when I met you. But you can look back and see God's faithfulness even in those times where it doesn't feel like you're having a mountaintop experience. But we live in the valleys, right? We don't live on the mountaintops. So that's where we got to actually do life. But it just feels sometimes like it's drudgery, right? Yeah.
And God will send you reminders of that too. Recently I had somebody reach out that it's always like when you're like spiraling and then the enemy's like, go down there. And you're like, man, have I even led someone to Christ that hasn't walked away, or like, what am I doing? And somebody will reach out, whether it's a child or an adult that's like, hey, I just want to thank you for ministering to me this time, and just like, it's like a little like, hey, God's working even when I can't see. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we just have to be faithful and trust, and be faithful and trust the harvest in the Lord's hands. But that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody probably about 6-7 months ago. He was actually just baptized, and he couldn't have been farther from the Lord in that way. He grew up Muslim. And we played football together. We had a very close relationship for about 5 or 6 years before I left Denver, Colorado, and moved to North Carolina. More than just football. We actually would hang out. We go play basketball at the gym, and things like that. And shout out to Siavash. He called me one day after just a long period of time. We hadn't chatted or anything like that, and he says, "I want to tell you what started this journey for me." And, and he talked to me about his relationship with God and how he gave his life to Christ, and how I, just hanging out and trying to be a Christian in a fallen, broken world, not feeling like I'm doing much, but hanging out and playing basketball with him. But a few of those times where I talked to him about my faith, right, something stuck, and I didn't get to, reap per se. Like, I wasn't there when, God was kind of moving and working. And it may have felt fruitless at the time because, I felt like, some of it wasn't quite seeping in, but God was doing something big there. And so I think when you look at it back over, 17 years of marriage or, your lifetime, you can look at how God was faithful in those moments. And so, and I know there's like countless situations when, as a parent of 4, and as a wife and, in the ministry, as long as because you've been in it a lot longer than just the average kid. You're a PK, born. Right? Pastor kid, yeah.
Born there.
Born there, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. So both in parenting and ministry, we know that perfection is impossible, right? And maybe we want to strive for it. We want to run the race as to win, if we can. How have you learned to let go of maybe unrealistic expectations, or maybe you're still working on it, and really try to embrace the beauty of progress, even though it might seem a little bit slow?
That's a good one. Well, I haven't. Like you said, I'm still growing
Okay.
with that. A good example is, I'll go back to my 5-year-old again. He's learning, in kindergarten, so he's learning how to write. And he's so frustrated that he can't just write it perfect the first time. And I'm not even looking for perfection. We're just looking for practice makes progress. And you and I know that because we can write in cursive, we can do all kinds of things. But wherever you're at is your heart. So for him, he's feeling overwhelmed with that. And there's things in my life that I feel like, man, I am constantly frustrated in this area, and it's because I have unhealthy expectations of myself or of others. So learning to have realistic ones is really about, for me, learning to accept God's grace on myself so that I am flowing that through me. Because when I'm shaming myself and I have all these expectations of myself, I might not even try to put them on others, but they come through regardless. And my kids will feel that. They'll feel the weight of expectation and, oh, I wasn't good at this or I wasn't good at that. And I'll be like, oh man, they're feeling that, pressure that I'm trying to hide.
Yeah.
or get rid of. So lots of grace. And just learning to be content with slow progress in homeschool, whether it's the gym. We know that when you put on braces or you go to the gym, it's not a one-day thing, right? We're just consistent, whether we feel like it or not. We don't let our emotions have the steering wheel. So that would be a big one. Not letting the emotions drive, but being consistent and faithful with what God's asked you to do. And when you're feeling tension ongoing for forever, that might be a sign that you have some unrealistic expectations that need to change.
I think emotions are great indicators that something is usually good or bad, but not necessarily shouldn't be in the driver's seat of how we make decisions, right? That's
Sure.
Beautifully put. So life with 4 kids. I mean, just saying it sounds chaotic to me, right? You also have a busy ministry that you're doing every single day, right? So obviously your schedule can get messy, literally and figuratively. So how do you find joy in those moments, even when things aren't picture perfect for you?
It's really hard to admit that I can really turn into the manager of my home.
Okay.
Instead of the nurturer. So when things are getting messy, oh man, that's the time when I need to turn my eyes heavenward. But sometimes I can get down on that task and, our home's getting cleaned, stuff's getting done, ain't nobody happy about it, because mama's cracking down.
Right.
So, learning to honestly try and be more type B so I can live longer is my goal. Because apparently type Bs live longer because they're less stressed. But when I actually remember to stop and pause and invite God into those moments, even doing it out loud, my kids can hear like, oh, she needs Jesus too. And that's all I'm trying to do. Is I literally had a conversation with my daughter today and I'm like, yeah, pretty much trying to tell you about this guy named Jesus, trying to follow him. Dad and I are going to fail you. Good luck. That's all I can do is just keep pointing there. A good example of this is when we went to Florida this last month. Andrew and I are exhausted from traveling, but our kids are on Colorado time, not Florida time. So after over an hour in their bed when they couldn't sleep, we were just ready to have mom and dad time, hang out, work, do things we wanted to do, read, watch a show. Baby's asleep. After over an hour of trying to control this, I just was like, God, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, hello, time to capitalize on this moment. So I was able to go to my big kid's bed and be like, hey, come in the family room. And we just made popcorn and played games quietly to keep baby asleep till midnight. And I would have missed out on that moment of, it was really messy and it was just selfishness. I wanted to be alone and I wanted to be done, but the Lord still had work to do. And so we were able to have this sweet moment because we were able to stop and be like, God, what do you want in this moment?
Well, think about how the kids must have felt in that situation. Like, hey, we're not just a nuisance, right? We are.
But you are.
Right, yeah. Well,
you can feel that way.
In the moment, right?
In the moment.
We're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I know you love your kids. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had 4 of them, right? You don't.
Totally.
I remember the conversation. Please, can I have another? I remember that. Yeah. So obviously you love your kids. There's no doubt about that. I mean, and I know you homeschool them. So again, no doubt that you like being around them if you're doing that, right?
There's nothing more refining. There's nothing been more refining.
For them or for you or both?
For me, marriage, ministry, homeschooling has been the most refining thing for me.
Yeah.
Your sin is just in your face with kids. Right. But then if you homeschool them, it's like there's no break. And so you're just having to make amends constantly, honestly. Yeah. So it's been refining.
How many parents don't do that? Like, I mean, like, seriously, I can't remember a time where anybody as an adult, let's just say as an adult in my life as a kid ever said sorry to me.
Oh, really?
For their behavior. Yeah, I know. But that may sound crazy to you because I know your parents.
Yeah.
And they're not perfect, but they're wonderful people.
Yeah.
And I don't think without Christ in your life, you totally get that quite right.
Yeah.
But how many times have you done that with your kids? Because every day you're doing hard things, right? Including raising your children. But I think the hardest thing you can do is say, you know what? Mommy didn't get that right, and for that, totally. I wasn't the picture of what Christ should be like in your life. Because a lot of times we're their heroes before Jesus is, right?
Yeah, and kids spell love Time.
Yeah.
You know, and so when we're having time together, but it's not quality time. I know that sounds crazy because you homeschool, you should have all this time together. whether you have a lot of time or a little time with your parents, the kind of time you have with your kids is really important. And so sometimes we can just really mess that up by unhealthy expectations, trying to force things, but also not making amends when necessary. And so, yeah, I definitely have a lot of times where I'm like, oh man, buddy, I was really harsh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I yelled. Or I'm feeling scared. Try not to say I did it because, but just I'm sorry, you know. And it's made a lot of difference in people in my life when elders or parents have apologized. It makes a difference.
I want to know that I'm loved unconditionally, right? And I think children want to feel that as well, but they also don't. They can't handle what, you know, as adults we've learned to handle at their age a lot of times. And so, you know, we have almost unreasonable expectations of children at times, that they can act the way that we want them to act. And that's just not possible, you know, every single time. Because if we're being honest, do we? You know, like I make myself promises all the time. I'm not going to act like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that in that meeting or whatever, right? But then I'm like, I'm there and I'm like, ooh, he said it. He said it. I'm going to say it, right?
I'm going to say it, yeah.
Right. I'm going to be that, you know, 5-year-old kid with impulses that I can't control, right? Where I'm like, I burp in the middle of a meeting or something silly, right?
Totally.
We're just grown-up versions of that, aren't we?
We are. And I think it's important to, like, for what, in parenthood in particular, for parents to tell their kids, I don't love you because you're good. I love you because you're mine. And, you know, kids need to feel loved, not just because they are great at athletics or grades or because they have good behavior.
Right.
But they need to feel loved, just their identity of who they are, your child.
Yeah.
That's who we are in Christ, right?
Amen.
But
Amen. Preach it, girl. All right. So you've been through tons of seasons, and you know I've seen most of them in your adult life, right? Of thriving and seasons of struggle. I guess you know we're talking about doing hard things. What lessons have you learned from the harder times that now really shapes the approach in every area of your life? And that could be parenting, it could be ministry, it could be leadership, it could be all three.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, you've known us. I mean, both my husband and I, we've had different addiction struggles that we've worked through. We've had miscarriage, or we've had to close churches that we've started, loss, rejection, friends. I mean, you know, everybody has a story. But I think, you know, I thought a lot about this question when you sent it, but I just kept coming back to that I need the cross as much as everyone that I'm leading to the cross. Because sometimes I can feel like, okay, you know, in just a different season from other people, but I can still learn from them, and I need to be teachable. Pride and kind of a know-it-all is something I inherited from some people in my life, and so I'm still constantly working on humility, but just learning that I gotta grow. And when you know this, we know that we're constantly growing, but we don't like to say it because, like, I thought I was a good person, and then I got married, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of selfish. And then you have a baby, and you're like, oh, I still need to die to self, and then you add a few more kids in there and homeschooling, and it's like, man, I need to not know what self is and just serve. And so just realizing that I need the cross as much as everyone that I'm leading to it, but I also just need to suck it up, cupcake, and serve sacrificially, just as Christ did for me, which is hard, and it's not fun sometimes, and it's messy, and it's tiring, and there's no gold stars. There's no extra 10K paycheck for Christmas because you got through 7th grade pre-algebra math in homeschool.
Yeah.
But knowing why I'm doing what we're doing is so rewarding, because your ministry, whether you're in the marketplace or at home, it's just right beneath your feet. Wherever God has you, your ministry is who's looking in your eyes. That's where God has you in that moment, and you got to be all in. And sometimes we forget that. We think we got to go do these big fancy things to make a difference. And God's shown me like, I'm going to take you off the stage and I'm going to humble you a little bit, and you're going to learn by serving. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, something tells me you probably don't need too much humbling. I think you got a pretty good head start. But I do agree with you. Like being a stay-at-home mom that does homeschool, somebody who's in ministry. A lot of times you're pushing your husband forward in a lot of the things that he is ambitious about. Like I know that you've done a great job of having your Type A personality, but stepping back and saying, I'm not going to be the center of attention in this situation, right?
Sure.
Because as you mentioned, in the work world where I spend almost all of my time, there are a lot of rewards. Some of them very immediate. Some of them, you've got to push through a tough year to hit the goal, to achieve what you want to achieve. Sometimes exceed those expectations. And many times you are rewarded for that monetarily, right? Or with trips or things like that, right?
Sure.
But you don't get that as a mom a lot of times, and so it's not like you get the gold star, as you said, right? So
Yeah.
So I do want to commend all the moms out there, and especially you, Megan, that's
Thanks, friend.
just rise up and do the hard things. I don't think there's anything harder than being a mom. I do know that, men, we compartmentalize things, and I'm not saying there aren't women that do that, but naturally we'll just be like, I left the house. That's not my problem anymore, right? Like I'm gonna go do my work thing for 8 to 10 hours, and then I'll come home, and hopefully the problem solved itself, right? Like I think most women we're just not built that way, and so even if you leave the house to go shopping and the husband's at home, you take it all with you while you're shopping, and then you come back, or you go out to the world, whatever you're doing. It could be ministry or work or whatever, and you take it all with you. So I'm curious, with that being that, like, it does feel selfless all the time. You probably feel like you have to be selfless all the time. Like that's got to be a struggle, right? And so talk to me about that.
Totally.
I'm curious.
I mean, totally. Sometimes I text an accountability partner or a friend, and they will text me a gold star.
Really?
You gotta have.
I love that. Like a literal gold star, yeah.
A literal gold star.
Yeah.
You gotta not do life alone. So whatever it is, you gotta find your people, and sometimes that's really hard because you can trust people, and then they let you down, and that's just part of life. Yeah. But I would say that that's been my biggest thing is like when I've messed up bad as a parent, I've had the accountability partner on speed dial and go bawl my face off in the covers and confess hey, I'm struggling with this, and then they can remind you who you are in Christ, right? Whatever you messed up, you weren't honest on this thing at work, whatever it is, you got to have those people in your life that love you in all your shapes and sizes and all your flaws and all your strengths. They know you, and they can remind you who you are in Christ. And as far as serving my family, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember who had this quote, but it was a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, a mom that was raising her boys, and she was like, when I walk down the street, I don't, she said something about I don't feel like, oh, I'm walking my 4-year-old down the street. I'm walking the future governor of Vermont down the street. So the reason I'm so set on what I'm doing and what God's put a passion in me for is to hopefully for generations with my kids that will love and worship God and lead our nation to Christ in the marketplace, wherever they are, that's what he's given me that vision for, if that makes sense. That it's not just getting through today, but all these tedious day after days will amount to something. But there's also this really awesome and horrible thing called free will. Oh,
that thing. Yeah.
My kids are going to get to choose. Do I want to follow Jesus or not? And so I just try and love them radically and make it, offer honey. Here, taste and see that the Lord is good. Listen to his words and have a lot of fun and sarcasm with it sometimes.
Well, that's true legacy stuff. You think about most of the people that store up treasures here. they store up those treasures only to be squandered by a generation that doesn't appreciate them, right? Like, so usually if somebody is very rich and they give an inheritance to their children, but that inheritance doesn't include, all the wisdom and values that are, I believe, only found in Jesus and through, our walk with him, right?
Yeah.
Then you have a lot of maybe resources, but you don't have a lot of wisdom to use those resources in a way that would be congruent with living a life that would create a legacy for the next generation, right? And so I think too often, even especially in the business world, we prioritize the wrong things. And I love the fact that you homeschool for a lot of different reasons, but one of the things is that you can prioritize those character building things that school just doesn't teach you, right? There's not a let's build character class. You're doing that every day in the in-between, in the periphery of doing school, math, English, like all the subjects, but you're building character within those children that is reflective of your beliefs and, certainly what we know gives life.
Totally. And I have to be reminded of it because, like I said, I'm still like recovering perfectionist. I want to check the box. Oh my gosh, how are we still not finished with this level or this lesson or whatever? And then the Lord's like, shut up. You guys just like talked about the Bible for a half an hour and then like your kids were ministering to you in this and I'm like, I know, but I want to finish the math worksheet because, but there's still, just whatever you're doing, whatever it is in your home or at work, we can have our to-do list, but it can really be an idol. And so we just need to take that before the Lord every morning and be like, all right, what do you want me to do? Here's what I want to do. You know what I want to do.
Yeah.
But we really do need to learn to go with the flow. And that's where we have those beautiful moments of surprises of God making messy things beautiful.
Back to our to-do list.
Back to our to-do list. Dun, dun, dun.
All right. So I think homeschooling for kids, we've talked a lot about that. But I'm curious, if you were to just outline like the perfect day for you, like a Monday through maybe a Friday, maybe you're not, doing every single day, but like a regular day, what does that look like for you? Like if you're checking off the list, and then maybe share one example of it not going the way you expected, but it really turning out to be better. I can think of a few of these when I've been hanging out with you, like where the day turns into something completely different because the kids won't, settle down. They're not doing what you want.
You just wanted to go to the grocery store, but the baby needs to nurse, so you're sitting in the car, and then a potty training kid needs to pee on the front tire, or I don't know. You're just going with the flow. My perfect day would be, honestly, I'm very extroverted, and I get filled up by that.
Yeah.
But right now my husband and I are struggling with just like trying to beat our kids awake and just having a 1-year-old again. It's going to be a couple years before we have full sleeping through the night. So just being able to wake up and like right now I'm doing physical therapy, do PT or a workout, get ready without somebody needing me. It does make a difference, or doing something I love. But then just getting to wake up to a house ready to go, and then spending time in the Word with my kids and doing some school. Honestly, being done by lunch, that's the goal every day, being done by lunch. And then going for like a hike with our hiking club or something. Like those are some of my favorite days. Things not going how I would like them to go is, I can think of, I have this video I can send to you, just trying to do school. Okay, so we're not trying to do school at home, we're trying to do homeschool. That looks different in different seasons. When there's an infant involved, it's very flexible. Sometimes I'm like, all right, you got baby for 10 minutes while I do this spelling lesson. But there was kind of this like I said, when I let go of like how I wanted things to be, something beautiful happened again this last week where I was I started off nursing baby, and then he ended up just playing on the floor quietly, which is like never happening right now. But sorry, my heater just went on.
I was gonna say it must be cold.
Gosh.
You are in Colorado.
I think it's going off.
It is pretty late in the year.
But I was sitting here, and I just had to, like, most of the time I just try and soak things in, but I had to film it. My son, I wish he would have been doing his math lesson, but he had his headphones on, and he was playing through our electric keyboard. He was making up a song and writing a song. My kindergartner was coloring on a box, and baby was joining him in that, in the box. And then I really needed to be doing the checklist of the spelling list I wanted with my 7th grader, but she ended up just outlining, and I was dictating our packing list for a big trip we were doing, and so she was spelling those things. So she has dyslexia, so I'm constantly trying to help her become a stronger reader and speller and tools. And so when you look around the room, nobody was in a desk and everything was nice, but like everybody was learning and engaged, and we were all together, and I don't know, it was just one of those sweet moments. And the Christmas tree was up, and then, you know, I'm pretty sure all heck broke loose after that, but it was a moment. You know, Jim Gaffigan, do you know him?
Oh, of course.
I love Jim
the Pale
Gaffigan.
Ape.
The Pale Ape. Oh, I love him. I love his line about, you know, he says, you know, when I tell people, because he has 5 now, but he's like, you know, when we just had our 4th, when I tell people I have 4 kids, you know, people are like, oh, okay, when are you going to stop, you know? But people are like, what is it like having 4 kids? And he says, well, just imagine you're drowning, and then someone hands you an infant, you know? Yeah. It's like this picture of like, okay, you know, overwhelming. But you got to laugh. It's a lot of fun. Laughter brings healing in life. You got to have fun, whatever you're doing.
Well, God's obviously got a sense of humor, because think about us. Like, we're just completely obscure creatures, aren't we? Mm-hmm. I mean, think about the spectrum of humanity, like how obscure we really are, and how we express ourselves. And yeah, it's pretty funny, to be honest. Yeah. But well, I love that, and I think, you know, embracing that that just fact that it's not going to go the way you expect it to go, and being okay with it. You know, I think that's growth for anybody. I know that, you know, when Hilda was cleaning out the under the sink today, because she, you know, found some sign of mice, and she's like, hey, get down here, help me figure this out. And I'm like, ain't nobody got time for that. Right? That's what I'm thinking. No. So begrudgingly I go down there, and I'm like, okay, what do you need? She's like, you know, she tell me all the things that are going on, and I'm like, what does this have to do with me? You know, is what I'm thinking. And I'm like, are you good? Do you need me? And she's like, I might need you to go to Ace. And I'm like, ugh. And then I was like, you know what? She needs some help. And then she calls up 5 minutes later, because I was getting ready to go, and she's like, I don't need you anymore. And I was like, okay. Yes. But I actually opened up to the idea that I was like, all right, I'm going to be some help to her. And so when I went back down there right after that, I was like, really, I will go right now, seriously. And I was really willing to. But, you know, there's always going to be an interruption, I guess, is the point I'm making. And, like, I think your perspective on it is really imperative, because hard things are just around the corner, whether you're expecting them or you're not, right? So yeah, being interruptible is, I'm still learning that. Yeah. But it's really important, because just like you are Hilda's teammate, like who is she going to call? Same thing in my marriage, same thing with my kids. Yeah. I'm their only mom. Yeah. I'm so if I'm going to be obsessed with doing this work or doing this thing, who's going to look into their eyes? Who's going to pray for them? You know, so just being all in where you're at is beautiful, but it's really hard. Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you for coming on here and hanging out with me for 37 minutes and some change. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. It was good. And you know I saw Andrew earlier, but I also want to thank him, you know, for his part of the faithful ministry. I know it's like a 60-40. You're doing 60, he's doing 40. But, it's just the way it is, right? Before we jump off here, I want to give the listeners a chance to hear more about your podcast and what you're doing. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about it, just a quick,
Sure.
Elevator pitch, and then where they can find you. I think you're doing amazing things, especially for your audience.
Thanks, friend. Yeah, so I write a blog called Only Love Today because, like I said, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So in those moments, really just trying to shine Christ. But I also do a podcast called Only Love Today, and it's Christian testimonies and resources for moms. But we have a lot of different type of people that listen. You can also find me on Instagram at Only Love Today Mom. But on there, you'll hear all kinds of different testimonies, but then also books and resources to help you be a parent that is growing one step closer to Christ.
I love it. So
Yeah.
she's practicing on me, folks, just to make sure that before she goes on the big interview series throughout. I think you're doing Conan next week and some others that I had a chance while I'm still in the mix. So I appreciate it, seriously.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you, Troy. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, and to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and it reminded you of whether you're leading a team, raising a family, or serving in ministry, that the hard seasons have a purpose, and that's something that we can all pull from it. If this episode resonated with you, I hope that you would share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement, and don't forget to subscribe for more. We'll see you next week. Take care.